Newsfirst, Newsline.
Good evening and welcome. With me this evening is a former leader of the Parliament and also the leader of the SJB, the Samgijana Balavegia, Mr. SAJITH PREMADASA. Good evening and welcome to the show, Mr. PREMADASA.
Good evening to you.
Starting off, you were elected to Parliament in the year 2000 and then you were elected as the Deputy Minister of Health in the year 2001. 20 years in Parliament now. What are the key highlights in your political career thus far?
I would say the major highlight would be the variety of programs and projects that I have been able to implement to ensure that the inequalities that exist in our society, the various disparities that exist in most sectors, we have been able to ensure through the formulation of equitable policies that we have done justice to all without discrimination. In terms of economically, politically and socially empowering the citizens of our country.
Now, your father, Mr. Premadasa, was a pioneer in building houses and the concept housing for all. Do you think that you were successful as the Minister of Housing and Construction during your term in office, during the last 4.5 years, when you were the minister in charge, in making sure that housing for all concept was prevalent across Sri Lanka?
I would like to put your question into the appropriate context. What I was mandated with through the housing ministry that I was given was 1/6 of the subject area that was given to my father. To put it differently, the subject of housing was separated into 6 different ministries, and I was responsible for the 1/6 that I was mandated with, particularly rural housing and middle income housing through public-private partnership. So to answer your question whether I was able to fulfill all my desires and aspirations in achieving much in the housing sector, no, I was not able to do so because of the various duplications that existed and the allocation of responsibilities to so many ministries. It basically disintegrated the subject. So we have learnt a lesson from that, and in our administration we will coalesce all 6 subject areas into one Ministry of Housing so that we have a coherent, integrated approach to ensure shelter for all.
So you were the deputy leader of the United National Party when ministerial positions were allocated to individuals during Ranil Wickremesinghe as the Prime Minister and Maithripala Sirisena as the head of the cabinet at that time. Didn't you raise opposition against such a move? It seems that they were trying to pull your leg from 2015 onwards.
Well, as far as putting forth obstacles to my political career, it did not commence from 2015, it commenced from way before that. No, basically, I did not interfere into that particular process because
And why is that?
Because the Constitution provides for 2 actors to get involved in the appointment of ministers and the allocation of subjects, and that's the President and the Prime Minister. I did in no way try to influence that process, and I was concerned about carrying out my mandate which was allocated to me rather than getting into a political fist fight over allocation of ministries and the allocation of institutions and subject areas.
You speak about two actors. One of the actors, that is namely the president of the country at that time, Maithripala Sirisena, during the 52-day government, offered you the post of prime minister. Why didn't you take this position, Mr. Premadasa? What was going through your mind at that time? You know very well, if you did take that position, you would have entered the presidential election as a prime ministerial candidate, a prime minister. Don't you regret this decision that you took?
I don't. In practical terms, some may construe that I made a mistake. However, I think it's high time that when political decisions are arrived at, that one tries to adhere to the highest principles of ethics and morality. I thought it was highly inappropriate for me to have taken up the prime ministership, which was offered to me approximately 71 odd times by the then president. I thought the correct thing was to ensure that the mandated prime minister at that time should be protected and the will of the people should prevail. I will in no way get involved in conspiratorial approaches to achieve status and position. That is my principal political path. I would rather go home than achieving positions through political conspiracies. So, if ever I'm going to be made the prime minister or the president of this country, I think it should be through the people's mandate rather than through political conspiracies.
So you said, Mr. Premadasa, that the president offered you the position 71 times.
Roughly speaking.
You are very well aware that politics is not a bed of roses. It is a rose with thorns. And if you want to get to the rose, you have to strive hard and somewhat be a bit of a person who has the political acumen. So don't you think that the decision that you took at that time is reflecting even now as we speak, when you are contesting as a prime ministerial candidate for the upcoming August 5th elections?
I feel very confident, very satisfied that I took the correct decision, and I basically sleep in peace because I know that I did the right thing. If it were to be reversed all the way back, and if the whole political drama was to be played all over again, I would have no hesitation at all in following the same path that I did. That is to adhere to the highest principles of ethics and morality in arriving at political decisions. I do know that politics is a very tough game, and on most occasions, the Machiavellian power politics approach prevails. However, I think it's time that through action and through practical processes, politicians of the modern day try to exhibit the moral approach and the ethical approach which most citizens of our country are expecting. They call us role models. They tell us to be examples to the others. And I have strived on all occasions to adhere to those higher standards.
Mr. Premadasa, I happened to interview your leader, that is the UNP leader Ranil Wickremesinghe, a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him why not palm off the responsibility to a young tier of leadership, and he said that it's important to have patience and experience in the political game. Did your patience run out when you split and went alone for the August 5th election, especially creating the SJB? What was the reason behind this?
It may seem to others that a split has taken place, but in fact, what we have done is carry forward the political formula that Honorable Ranil Wickremesinghe prescribed, basically after the presidential elections. He mentioned his disinclination to lead the general election campaign, and he was also highly reluctant to give up the party leadership of the United National Party. Therefore, he proposed an interim solution. That was the fact that we would all be going into the general election through an alliance. And he himself proposed myself as the leader of the alliance, the prime ministerial candidate, and also as the head of the nomination board. And in addition to that, he proposed that I select an appropriate general secretary for the alliance, which was approved by the parliamentary group and the working committee. So it was not I who initiated any split. There should not have been a split. We would have had the opportunity of working together under the formula that was proposed by Honorable Ranil Wickremesinghe. The sad fact is, at the last hour, he pulled the rug from under, and I will in no way be called by anyone as the person who split the party. I think it's the converse. It is Honorable Ranil Wickremesinghe who reneged on his promise, and it is he who violated the agreement.
Mr. Premadasa, when you look at this party politics at present, the SJB and the UNP at present, and the SLPP as well as the SLFP at present, one might say that the SJB is going on the footsteps of the Sri Lanka Puljana Peramuna. We saw the split taking place between the SLFP and the SLPP, and as a result of that, the SLPP candidate emerged victorious at the last presidential election. Are you all also trying to do the same thing?
I don't believe so. I think that type of an interpretation is a total misconception. Our new alliance is guided by the principles of a unitary Sri Lanka, a patriotic Sri Lanka, a sovereign Sri Lanka, which protects its territorial integrity and political independence with due rights to all citizens, irrespective of race, ethnicity, or any other issues that make all of us different from one another. We are firm believers in prosperity for all, rather than prosperity to an exclusive club of people. We believe in balanced economic growth with a view to promoting economic development, which is people based. We are firm believers of a knowledge based developmental approach, where knowledge becomes the main catalyst in jump starting our economy and enhancing our economic strengths. We are also believers of the welfare state, which is indispensable to ensure that justice and fairness exists in our society. These principles give us a unique brand, and it differentiates us from the usual traditional political party or political alliance that exists in our society.
Now, there were a few struggles within the UNP, Mr. Premdas, during the last one decade, if you take a look at it, about for leadership in the party. In 2011, there was a leadership struggle after the presidential election, where Sarath Fonseca was defeated as the presidential candidate and Mahinda Rajapaksa won. And then there was a leadership struggle prior to 2015 as well to decide as to who the candidate of the UNP is going to be. And then following the local government elections a few years ago, there was again a leadership struggle subsequent to the election. Why did you all decide to go on your own path now? What was the reason behind this? SJB as a political party, it's very new to the political forte at present. Why decide to do it now?
I'm afraid you're persisting with your line of questioning based on a false premise. And if I may explain to you,
Yes, please.
that is, we did not take a decision to go on a different path. The United National Party Working Committee approved this process of contesting from an alliance, and the whole program was sabotaged by Honorable Ranil Wickremesinghe. So, in the last hour, we could not take a step back because we had gone ahead with so many activities and so many programs which were mandated by the Working Committee of the United National Party.
If you could have turned back time, Mr. Premadasa, what changes would you bring in to the UNP? Because you were also the party's deputy leader at one point.
I don't need to look back. I need to look forward. And in the near future, we hope through the support of the people that we will achieve, hopefully, at the general elections, that we will promote party democratization. We will enhance that the voice of the voiceless is heard in the decision making structures of the political party. We will also make sure that everyone is politically empowered, with no one left behind. We will also ensure that our policy-making processes identify the major national interests and the major national objectives. So I don't need to look back. I will look forward to the day that we will be reuniting all under one progressive political umbrella.
What lessons did you learn subsequent to the presidential election last year? And what lessons are you bringing forward from that point onwards for the general election on the 5th of August 2020, which is a few days from now?
Well, overall, we made a serious assessment of the pluses and minuses of our political campaign, and we have made a very thorough assessment, and we have gone through the details and the minutiae of the whole process, and we will strive to move forward devoid of the mistakes that we committed during the past.
Let's talk about the August 5th general elections now, Mr. Premadasa. You have been predominantly contesting from the Hambantota district for the last 2 decades, for the last 20 years. Why did you decide to come from the south to the western province and contest from the Colombo district, which was one of the strongholds of your father at one point?
One of the main reasons was the fact that the SJB is a new alliance, And this alliance needs coordination, nurturing, support, and a coherent approach to our campaign. So I think that's better done from the metropolis rather than from a distant district. This enables me, of course, to serve the whole country. This country consists of 9 provinces, 25 districts, approximately 332 divisional secretariat areas, 14,022 Grama Sevaka divisions, and 51,000 small village, rural and urban hamlets. And I strongly believed that we needed a very coordinated approach with a bit of centralization and a lot of devolution in terms of attaching responsibilities. So the center of gravity for our activities would have been Colombo or somewhere in Western Province. That would have provided us with the appropriate mechanism to coordinate the countrywide activity. So basically, it's no big difference as we prevail and become victorious at the general elections. We shall serve all rather than a particular district. And all districts that have their livelihood needs and their infrastructural objectives, they will be fulfilled in a coordinated manner through special task forces which will mandate the Prime Minister, the requisite ministers, and the political representatives of the localities to work in harness to ensure that there is rural, urban, regional, and national prosperity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sajith Premadasa. I'm in conversation with Mr. Sajith Premadasa, the former leader of the opposition as well as the leader of the SJB. Stay connected, stay with the Newsline Special. We will be right back.
Newsfirst, Newsline.
Welcome back. This is the Newsline Special. Mr. Premadasa, answering to one of my questions earlier, you said that it's important for you to be in the center, that is in the capital, Colombo, to coordinate, to nurture, and have a coherent approach for the campaigning ahead of the August 5th elections. It seems to me that you have taken the full onus of running the campaign this time around, as far as the SJB is concerned. Do you have a good team who's backing you to the tilt this time around?
Do I have one?
Do you have a team, a good
Of
team?
course, of course. I think I'm privileged and blessed to have a set of very capable group of experts, politicians, professionals, specialists who are helping with our campaign. And we want to make it a very professional campaign. And we also want to be very professional afterward in transforming and translating our declarations into action. That is very important because we hope to establish trust and credibility with the people of our country. Yes, I do have an excellent team, and I hope to utilize my team to the maximum to obtain optimum benefit for the country.
Mr. Premadasa, one of the allegations leveled by the civil rights activists as well as civil rights movement and even the general public is the fact that political parties predominantly have not been giving nominations for the right candidates to contest the elections. SJB nomination list, have you all given a plethora of people for the general public to decide as to who they would want to elect and select to the next parliament of the country? Do you all have the right candidates?
Considering the limitations that we had, especially the time limitations, and you do know that we were supposed to go together as a political movement, together with the United National Party, up until the time that Honorable Ranil Wickremesinghe decided to renege on his promises, and he pulled the rug from under. So within that political context and the time limitations that were there, yes, I'm happy with the lists, of course, but I would have loved to have had a longer time period to allow more professionals, experts, specialists, people of repute to have come in to the process. We hope to do so at the elections that are hopefully coming up, in the provincial elections and in the local government elections, because we will have adequate time for those processes to take place. So, to be very honest, within the time restrictions, within the closeted, limited period that we had at that time, this is the best that we could have done, and I'm happy with what I have done.
Individuals in the caliber of Malik Samaravikrama, Mangala Samaravira, Kabir Hashim, who were one time staunch supporters of Ranil Wickremesinghe, has switched allegiance now, and they are with you. And even during the presidential campaign, we saw them very vociferous at political fora, expressing their strength and making sure that you went the extra mile in becoming the president of the country. However, ahead of the August 5th elections, you saw a complete U-turn taken by Mangala Samarvira. We don't see the likes of Malik Samar Vikram and Kabir Hashim in the political fora right now. Something went wrong?
Honorable Kabir Hashim is one of the major stalwarts in our party, and he is leading the Kegal district as the district leader. So the idea that he is aloof and not in the political process, SJB, is a misnomer. Coming to personnel like Honorable Mangala Samaravira and Honorable Malik Samaravikrama, Honorable Malik Samaravikrama continues to support our party. He has himself decided to retire from politics, and that's an individual decision that he has taken, which is of his own volition. Honorable Mangala Samaravira was appointed the district leader of Mathura, and for his own reasons, he decided to remove himself from the campaign. If you ask me whether I'm happy about it, no, I'm not. But I do respect his decision and the principles that he has espoused, through which he arrived at that decision. That's an individual right we have to respect. I'm not happy about the fact that he withdrew from the campaign, because I think it's a loss for the SJB, because he has always been a very talented person, and he is one who has always strived to serve the people of our country, and we got on very well. And even right now, I'm extremely confused as to why he decided to withdraw from the present political scene. But we will strive to forge future alliances. It does not mean that doors are shut for Honorable Mangala Samarvira and myself and the SJB to work together.
Mr. Premadasa, interestingly, when you go to social media right now, these days in particularly, you see people saying the need to have a breath of fresh air in the parliament. However, the SJB has approximately over 80 sitting MPs contesting again for the August 5th elections. And now this is the same case with the SLPP as well. So there seems to be no fresh air, the breath of fresh air that needs to be there in Parliament being projected in the list of the SJB. Do you think that this may go as a negative at the upcoming elections?
When you mention the word breath of fresh air, it can have several connotations. It could be as far as personnel are concerned, it could be in terms of new thinking, modern approaches, different structures deciding on policy priorities. So I believe that we provide the breath of fresh air in terms of novel and unique policies that will address the national concerns and the needs that are prevailing in our society today. As far as changes of personnel, yes, I think there have been a lot of new people who have been brought in. We are also happy to have over 80 members of parliament supporting our political programs. I think changes have taken place. Transformations will also take place while the processes are underway, and we will have a path breaking approach to providing solutions for the needs of our country, for the grievances, and to fulfill the expectations of the people of our country.
Mr. Premadasa, COVID 19, how challenging has COVID 19 been to the campaign trail thus far?
It has been an extreme challenge. We have not had the opportunity of conducting a normal conventional campaign. There have been various rules, regulations, and strictures which we have strived to follow at all times. However, I think we have to look at the greater priority, that's protecting the lives of the people of our country. Personally, I think the existing administration should have been less political and more national in their thinking in terms of dissolving parliament. I personally think that if dissolution had taken place much later, we would have created the environment for a free and fair election in the normal sense. COVID 19 has presented all of us with extraordinary challenges, and it has been a very trying process trying to address these challenges. But we will strive at all times to ensure that the people's lives are protected while we are on the campaign trail.
Mr. Premadasa, seems to me that political parties now have a magic wand in their hands to bestow election promises as they have been doing over the last couple of decades in Sri Lanka as far as campaigning is concerned. Now, one of the pledges that you have made openly in public is the fact that a grant of 20,000 rupees will be provided to an affected family by COVID 19. When Sri Lanka is undergoing a negative growth, almost a negative growth by the end of this year, how is this 20,000 rupees even possible?
So the policymakers have to decide whether we are going on an approach of retarded growth and low growth patterns, which is highly inimical to the economic health and the well being of our people in our society. Or there's another choice. The choice is to make a concerted effort for the state to intervene and provide the economic system with the requisite financial injection that it needs. We need to boost the economy. In order to do so, we have to have a comprehensive fiscal stimulus package. This entails putting money in the hands of the people. Now, one might ask as to how we arrived at providing funds to the people. What motivated us to do so? I have to say, the premise on which we have based our decisions are economically sound. I will take you back in history to the Great World Economic Depression that took place in 1929 to the 1933 time period,
1930s.
29 to the 33 time period, where the whole world, the world economy, and the economies of countries went through economic depression, stagnation, growth retardation, and loss of income. So, how did the world come out of the Great Economic Depression? It was the laudable principles that were expounded by John Maynard Keynes and his theory of aggregate demand management, which basically prescribed injecting the economy with adequate financial resources through the tax and spend instruments that were available to the various governments. At that time, we saw the New Deal program of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, then President of the United States, which entailed boosting the economy through a multifarious approach of injecting funds
But
into
Mr.
the economic
Premadasa,
sector. If I may
yeah.
kindly finish this. So, right now, most economic specialists have prescribed that approach, and almost all of the countries are following it. Look at United States. They have boosted their local economy with financial support that's given to individuals, and the whole overall program amounts to 2.3 trillion US dollars. Look at what's happening in the United Kingdom. The Chancellor of the Exchequer has enunciated a program named the furlough program, where private sector employees are provided with 80% of their salaries through the taxpayers' funds. In Bangladesh, they have gone further, and Bangladesh is providing 100% of the salaries. Look at India. India has chosen to provide a fiscal boost to the small and medium sized industries and to those who are living in poverty. So, what we have prescribed is the provision of 20,000 rupees per family for selected families, families who are undergoing urban and rural poverty, the self employed, the labor class of our society, those who are unable to find adequate funds to fulfill their 3 meals a day. So, the less fortunate in society will be provided with this 20,000 rupee boost per month, per family, not till time immemorial. It will be a short term package.
For how long?
Well, it's a trial and error process because unlike the 700 billion rupee tax revenue lost perpetrated by the present administration because of short-sighted economic gimmicks, I don't propose to implement our policies in an ad hoc and unplanned manner. We'll have a trial, we'll have a trial and assessment approach to ensure how the economy is boosted through this financial injection. And that's not all. We propose to reduce fuel prices within the first 24 hours of our administration. So these tools will be used to put money into the hands of the people. So what happens next? When you put monies into the hands of the people, they will consume, so consumption is boosted. They will invest, investment is boosted. And they will also save, savings are boosted. So a combination of consumption, investment, and savings automatically results in the economy once again burgeoning rather than contracting.
Mr. Premadasa, speaking to us earlier, you just mentioned that about the Great Depression, and you spoke about what steps were taken at that time by many countries to combat the depression at that time. And then you spoke about the four countries, that is US, UK, Bangladesh, India, for giving stimulus packages to the people who have been affected by COVID-19. Let's take Bangladesh out of the equation, but out of the four countries, three countries out of the four countries that you mentioned are major economic powerhouses in the world. Can you draw a comparison to those economies, to the Sri Lankan economy, and say, guess what, this is the way forward, let's give a stimulus package? Seems like this too is coming out of the hat of the magician with a magic wand.
No, I think even if you look at lesser countries, even the middle income countries, the so-called LDCs, the less developed countries, that does not automatically mean that their fiscal environment is not sound enough to embark on processes that I've just announced and explained to you. There are so many countries. I think that there's virtual universal application of injecting the economy with funds through fiscal stimulus packages. And I don't know for what reason the Sri Lankan government has refrained from doing so. I think to the detriment of the people and to the detriment of our country.
Thank you very much, Mr. Premadasa. We're going for a short commercial break. When we come back, it's Newsline special with the leader of the SJB, Mr. SAJITH Premadasa.
Newsfirst, Newsline.
Welcome back. This is Newsline special. Mr. Premadasa, your party manifesto ahead of the August 5th general election was unveiled a few days ago ahead of the election. Now, when you take a look at this manifesto, it's a completely different manifesto to which was tabled by your party at the 2019 presidential election. Why such a drastic change of manifestos?
I would respectfully disagree with you in one sense, in the sense the basic principles are the same. However,
the content has changed.
Content has changed related to the COVID-19 crisis and the ensuing consequences, economic, political, social consequences that were impacted upon the people of our country. I think we have properly assessed the ground situation in the urban, rural and estate sectors, and also in the various geographical regions. And we have ascertained the basic situation, the reality at the grassroots level. And yes, we have added new things in terms of trying to ameliorate the shortcomings of the people and the country. And we have tried to address the variety of grievances that the people face due to this new phenomenon, COVID-19. In that sense, there are a lot of additions But the basic principles, the principles that I stated before, in terms of the country, the basic precepts are the same. There is no difference at all.
Mr. Premadasa, foreign policy. Your father adopted a very non-aligned foreign policy view as far as the world was concerned. What is your foreign policy if elected as the Prime Minister of the country?
I think our foreign policy will be dictated in trying to achieve our national interest. And we would like to have strong relationships with countries that will add value to our country. Such relationships will be utilized and exploited to benefit our motherland. And we will adopt a very strategic and surgical approach in trying to achieve our national objectives. And it is those objectives per se that will decide on our foreign relationships and its content. So we will always assess the costs and the benefits, and we will go forth with policies where the benefits outweigh the costs. So we will have a very, very scientific and a professional approach to government in all its aspects. And foreign policy is one important aspect where we should strive to ensure that any relationship by itself accrues value to our country. It adds value to our country.
Mr. Premadasa, what is the strategic and surgical approach that you would adopt as far as the UNHRC resolution against Sri Lanka is concerned, and also addressing the Tamil issue in the world fora?
Well, I firmly believe in redressing the grievances of all through a transparent, well accepted local judicial mechanism. And I think that's the way to move forth. We shall ensure that through any processes that we initiate, that the country is united. Unity of the country is very important. So all interests of people belonging to a variety of ethnicities and religious persuasions and other beliefs, that we have a united approach, an approach that is devoid of domestic polarization, an approach which is justiciable and justifiable, an approach which is just and fair. So we have absolutely no reservations as to the approaches that we have promulgated in terms of addressing these major issues. And I believe we have the requisite talent and the capabilities in our team to face all of these international challenges.
Mr. Premadasa, responding to one of my earlier questions, as soon as we started the show, you said there are two actors, one is the President and one is the Prime Minister in governance. Mr. Premadasa,
Major actors.
Major actors,
Right.
Major actors in governance. Mr. Premadasa, if you look at the Sri Lankan political landscape, 2002, let's revisit 2002, you had Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumartunga as the President and you had Ranil Wickremesinghe as the Prime Minister. That match didn't work. 2015, you had Maithripala Sirisena as the President, Ranil Wickremesinghe as the Prime Minister. It was sheer comedy of errors that we saw at that time. Hypothetically, if you win the next election, you would have a president from a different political party, that is Gotabaya Rajapaksa representing the SLPP's larger coalition, and then you would be the SJB's Prime Minister. Do you think this mix, this play will work for us?
Well, I think you mentioned in one of your questions the expectation of our people to have a breath of fresh air, and I intend to provide that breath of fresh air in working together with the President to achieve our national interests. Of course, our predecessors have not provided the best of examples of working together. But I would like to say that I'm a different person. I believe that I have the requisite acumen and the skills and capabilities that a leader should possess. And I believe I am blessed and bestowed with unique talents to work together, following principles of consultation, discussion, and providing constructive solutions to the country. Of course, I do believe that one has to always work from a very broader national perspective. I believe the selfish tendencies, the highly skewed power political approaches of our predecessors did not work well. But I think it would be very, very unfair to compare what went on with octogenarian politicians and what will happen with the SJB, breath of fresh air, which will strive to work constructively to promote our national interests.
Have you spoken to the President about a possible partnership in the future?
No, I haven't. But I believe I possess the requisite powers of persuasion to ensure that once we are elected to government, that we will work together to achieve the national interest. I think broad-minded, intelligent, knowledgeable policymakers should follow suit, and I have absolutely no problem in doing so.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa yesterday at a political rally said that he seeks a 2/3 majority to bring in a new constitution to the country. And you all were instrumental, your government was instrumental in bringing forth the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. What is your position on this? Do you think that the 19th Amendment to the Constitution should be done away with? Or do you think that a new Constitution is needed to the country? What are your thoughts on the 13th Amendment to the Constitution? In terms of constitutional provisions, what is your stand, Mr. Premadasa?
I think we have to accept the fact that the 19th Amendment brought about far-reaching changes with regard to issues of responsible government, transparency, and accountability. I do admit that there are some weaknesses that we have to address in the various details in terms of the amendment is concerned, in terms of strengthening the independence of those institutions and providing them with an enhanced mandate to work apolitically. However, I'm a firm believer that 19th Amendment is something that we should all protect and reform to the betterment of the country.
So there may be a locking of horns between you and the President when it comes to constitutional provisions, isn't it, Mr. Premadasa?
No, I think we can always resolve contentious issues through discussion. I'm a great believer in talking, exchanging ideas. And when one is persuaded of the larger interests of the country, I always believe that sanity will prevail.
Mr. Premadasa, tell us about your future plans for Sri Lanka in terms of artificial intelligence, in terms of bringing in scientific research to the country, because we see developed nations like the United Kingdom, the United States, India, all speak of artificial intelligence and how the countries should be aligned towards this scientific approach at the end of the day. What are your plans for Sri Lanka?
I am a great believer in promoting and achieving the highest levels of English linguistic skills and literacy skills and the requisite IT skills. And I shall strive to establish centers of excellence available to the youth of the country to access these institutes, which will add value to the youth of the country, enable the youth to obtain better knowledge in the aforementioned areas: English skills, computer skills, IT skills, and areas such as robotics, modern technology, and artificial intelligence, of course. I think we need to have a path-breaking approach to get our vision implemented. This is the biggest problem. We always come up with glorified declarations and proclamations, but unfortunately, when it comes to implementation, everyone talks of the various obstacles and bottlenecks. So what is most important is having a practical plan to ensure that modernization of Sri Lanka in all its aspects is implemented. The basic policy instrument that we will implement to achieve this onerous task is to set up at divisional secretariat levels these centers of excellence. I am well reminded of the pivotal role played by the institutes of management and institutes of technology that have been set up at state level in India, which has enabled the Indian youth to become knowledgeable in all the aspects that you mentioned. So my dream is to have such centers of excellence at divisional level, providing opportunities for the youth to strengthen their knowledge, their skills, and become empowered educationally to become very competitive in the international labor market. And it's not something that can be achieved in the very short term, but we shall do so in the medium and long term.
Mr. Premadasa, one final question before I leave you tonight. The question is, have you thought of a cabinet, hypothetically, if you are elected as a Prime Minister on the 5th of August? Have you thought of a cabinet? Give us a hint as to who will be in your cabinet.
Well, to be very honest, I have been focusing on the political campaign right now, but every day I always think of the persons who are earmarked for the various targets that we have to achieve. These are the national targets. The selection will be based purely on meritocracy, and it will not be based on friendship. We will ensure that the best and the brightest will be given their requisite responsibilities, and right now we are continuously assessing the situation, and we are having a filtering process, but we are well aware of the large objective, that is to be victorious. And it's only after that that we'll be able to implement our thoughts and our vision.
Here's News First and our network wishing you to be victorious at the August 5th elections. All the very best to you and your team. Mr. Premadasa, looking forward to seeing you subsequent to the August 5th elections to see what exactly is the position of your party and where you all stand at that time. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. SAJITH Premadasa, the leader of the opposition, the former leader of the opposition, as well as the leader of the Samagi Jana Balawege. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for your time. And
always
support.
a pleasure to have you.